It can be difficult in any medium to find content and story that are so invested in atmosphere like Metro Last Light. 4A Games has succeeded again in creating a rich and haunting experience with hours on hours of excitement and tension that do not disappoint. Much like Metro 2033, you will encounter all the hope and horror that follows living your life in the tunnels of Moscow. Last Light is dark, gritty, and chock full of atmosphere. It takes no time at all to throw Artyom back into the depths of the cold but familiar world of Moscow's metro tunnel system. The first few minutes of Metro Last Light throw the player into a whirlwind of mystery and confusion. Metro picks up where Metro 2033 left off. Artyom encounters a sentient race known as the Dark Ones. Those beings were thought to have been destroyed following the actions of Metro 2033. It has been discovered that there may be one still alive, and Artyom has been assigned to seek out this survivor and learn their true nature. One of the key elements of Metro Last Light is to enjoy the story and the mystery around it. Let's talk about what makes this game a must for any atmosphere-loving, post-apocalyptic tunnel junkie. Metro succeeds where most fail by making you feel a part of its gloomy underworld by letting you dive into its dark and damp corridors filled with suspense and mystery. Through the beginning of Last Light, the player is wedged into these congested spaces with fellow comrades as they talk about issues within the ranks and problems through the tunnel system. It gives the player a sense of claustrophobia and longing to move about on the Earth's surface. Metro has its way of showing the players what tunnel life is all about, with interactions built into the mechanics of the game. From having to holster your weapon to recharging your flashlight or placing a filter on your gas mask. All these make the world that Artyom lives in a believable environment for the player to experience. From time to time, there will be small interactions between the people of Metro. There are people who are drinking their days away at local bars, to people listening to old music tapes to pass the time. This shows how little hope is left in the people of Metro, and how valuable the surface is to humanity. With the ground above unsafe to walk on, it leaves the people having to scavenge and live within the confines of the Metro, which means no modern technology. Everything you see and interact with feels hastily put together with what could be found. Hints of this can be seen and felt when having to purchase and discover equipment through exploration of the Metro, as well as the surface. In Last Light, no one uses coins or paper dollars. It's all about the grade of ammunition a man can carry with him and what odds and ends he has in his pocket. This allows the player to spend military-grade ammunition on rounds for their various weapons, explosives, and other types of gear, or even to upgrade to special attachments for the weapons that the player is carrying. Gunplay is improved by leaps and bounds compared to Metro 2033. These improvements help make the world a more realistic place, since your mind isn't being constantly caught up in the faulty mechanics or clunky controls that plagued the previous title. Artyom can hold up to 3 weapons in his arsenal at a time, thus giving the player a chance to handle the creatures and people of Metro successfully in multiple ways with little effort. This is something that 4A really has improved upon since Metro 2033. Stealth plays a bigger part in Metro Last Light than it originally did in Metro 2033. Many times I was challenged to maneuver around rooms and tight corridors filled with enemies and obstacles. This forces you to stick close to shadows in these sequences and avoid light as much as possible. This is a very common challenge while playing Last Light, and you will constantly be put in this situation of having to choose between facing your enemies head-on or to simply sneak by. Last Light utilizes a visual clue on Artyom's wristwatch, as well as a musical cue to indicate if the player is visible or not. This mechanic would be more useful if all the enemies I encountered in the game didn't walk around as if their eyes had fallen out of their heads. Although the AI can be pretty forgiving, it still helps boost the atmosphere of the game by mixing well with the mood of Metro to deliver some very tense moments. With any game at the end of a console cycle, we get to see how far a game can push these old machines. Metro Last Light is a juggernaut on the PC alone. It tests PCs in every way possible, so you can imagine how much the console versions suffer. With my experience with the Xbox 360, I can tell you that the visuals degrade quite a bit. The textures look dirty and are low resolution. Lighting and overall immersion can and at times will be affected by these issues. It becomes most apparent when stepping outside on the surface of Moscow's wasteland. With decaying architecture and ravaged landscape, one experience was more difficult just because I couldn't make out if I was about to step onto land or fall off into water. These types of situations can mean life or death. Metro really has to limit itself to perform at a reasonable rate on consoles. If at all possible, play this on a PC. Keep in mind, if you are not running an NVIDIA card to turn off PhysX, or the game will be virtually unplayable. Although these graphical problems are troublesome, they are not substantial reason to skip this game. These graphical issues are just a product of aging consoles, and are to be expected at this point in the timeline. If I had to pick one glaring mistake from Metro Last Light, it would be the use of storytelling through notes. Notes await you when traveling through the Metro to discover and read. In my opinion, this is a poor way to push the story forward. I want Metro to immerse me in its world, and there's nothing more hindering than having to pull myself out of my experience so I can comprehend a bunch of text scrawled on a piece of paper. The goal of the game should be for the player to get lost in this world. Storytelling through collectibles is not the answer. It's challenging to compare Metro to any other story or medium. I have had such a deep experience with Last Light and have thought about its world past playing the game. Metro Last Light has some problems with AI and story progression, but these are small blemishes on the overall face of Metro. With a world filled with tragedy and despair thrust forward by the creatures and characters that inhabit it, Last Light has left me with an insurmountable craving for more.